Come join Makeshift Stories at Pod Summit on June 22nd. Details at the end of this episode. Hello, and welcome to Makeshift Stories. Thank you for listening. You can help us out by telling your friends about us and getting them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Now, open your imagination and take a journey into the improbable as you listen to Makeshift Stories 165. Ken Likeley, Accidental Interdimensional Drifter, in The End of the World. Read by Mitchell 2. Ken loved routines. In a world that seemed to have collectively, or at least all the senior managers, just come back from a TED Talk on disruptive business management practices, routines gave him a sense of comfort, a sense of predictability, a sense that he would know where things were tomorrow. Important things, like the washroom, or the remote for his TV, or the recycle bin, where he was in transit to at the moment with an armful of, well, he really didn't classify it as mail, just because a postal worker delivered it. It was individually addressed bright, shiny bits the Postal Service insisted on plugging up his mailbox with, in blatant defiance of the demands not to do so Ken had wallpapered onto his once pristine, custom-built mail receptacle. He wedged the city-supplied recycle bin open with an elbow, trying not to drop the fruits of today's postal delivery person's efforts on the ground. The city really needed to rethink how the stupid blue bins opened, Ken thought. They were raccoon and apparently human-proof. When the lid finally decided Ken wasn't either, it flopped back, knocking one of the rot-resistant plasticized direct mail pieces onto the ground. Ken dropped the rest in the bin, then went to pick up the rogue ad, which had obviously conspired with the wind in a bid to avoid presenting its call to action to some future, and no doubt confused, archaeologist, and was now stubbornly lying on his doorstep. Ken had neglected to close the door, or, more accurately, hadn't considered it important to. The next gust of wind would blow the ad into his front hall, where a rather large pile of other like-minded plastic-coated pieces of paper, Ken tried his best to ignore, had accumulated. Not wanting the thing to assume it could join them, Ken moved fast, for a middle-aged man with a sugar donut addiction, to grab it. When he bent down to snatch the nasty piece of work, a small blue and green ball bumped his left foot. It was one of those soft, rubbery globe balls, with crude, barely recognizable continents in lime green stamped onto an ocean of neon blue. Ken picked it up and turned it around in his hand, noting the chew marks and how the Americas reminded him of a deformed crab. He remembered seeing a basket of the things on the discount table in front of the Pet Universe store in the mall. He hadn't thought much, meaning nothing, about them until now. Pain suddenly surged up Ken's left leg, starting in his flip-flop-adorned foot, racing its way uphill to Ken's brain. The slight delay may have been the reason Ken hadn't noticed the large orange tabby using his foot as a temporary scratching post. Ow! 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 Ken yipped, dropping the ball and instinctively kicking out his leg, then shaking it to extricate the furry parasite. The tabby, anticipating the reaction, calmly moved aside, picked the ball up in its mouth, walked around Ken, and through the open door, giving that impression cats are quite good at, that it owned the house, and it was about time you left the door open so it could access what was rightfully its property. Hey, you! Get out of here! Ken yelled after the cat, who naturally ignored him, and somehow managed to nudge the door so it started to close. Ken hobbled up the doorstep, trailing blood from the scratches on his left foot, catching the obstinate thing just before the latch clicked. He didn't have a key with him. Hey, cat! Out! Now! Ken repeated, pushing the door aside, and immediately slipping. He couldn't see that the pest had precisely dropped the globe ball where his foot would land, and the new progressive reading glasses he had paid extra for to get transition lenses were still in sunglass mode, blinding him. He fell forward into his living room, dazed. Oh, look what the orange cat dragged in. Someone laughed from the direction of Ken's new recliner, followed by the sound of claws kneading virgin leather. You cat, stop that! Ken demanded while he picked himself up, tearing off his readers, which were still wondering if it was time to transition to clear. After all, their new owner might be headed outside again, and it would be such a pain to transition twice when once would do just fine, thank you very much. Ken's arms now joined his left foot in protest, telling Ken's brain to be more careful and that maybe he should sit down before anything worse could happen. So he started to ease himself into the wing-back chair closest to the door, which didn't fit the authentic mid-century decor of the rest of the room. Authentic in that it had been new 60 years ago when Ken's parents bought everything, rather than a recent purchase from a hip, overpriced store with sales staff that sneered at people like Ken. As Ken began to ease himself down into the well-worn beloved chair, something behind him, more precisely something under his backside, moved, and needles seemed to jab into his fleshy bits back there. Ken jumped up in surprise, almost knocking over the Danish modern coffee table.
"It's already taken, big butt. Sit on the floor where you belong."
Ken rounded on the voice and saw it was the orange tabby which had assaulted him outside. "Out!" he demanded indignantly, and was about to sweep the thing off the chair when it hissed and bared its teeth. Then the weirdest thing happened. The cat appeared to grow, or Ken shrink, or both. He couldn't tell which, so to avoid irritating something the size of a cougar, Ken stopped his hand in mid-flight, lest it suffer a fate worse than his still stinging left foot.
"We need one of them to witness,"
another voice growled from across the room.
"I know it's a pain, but them's the rules that we agreed to, mates."
Ken's head rubbernecked around the room to discover 3 cats, sort of like your standard domestics, but bigger, a lot bigger, and in very un-cat-like poses occupying Ken's favorite places to sit. The one who had just spoken, a big, long-haired Maine Coon, was relaxing on the sectional, now visibly covered with cat hair, which fell off the thing like dandelion fluff. It was propped up like a middle-aged man watching a game on the TV, with its back and head against the pink and orange hand-crocheted cover Ken's aunt had given him for his 40th birthday. Ken considered it ugly, but had kept it draped on the back of the sectional just in case his aunt dropped in, spontaneously inviting herself. Spontaneous self-invitation was a genetic trait on that side of Ken's family. Apparently, the cat, having the same genetic adaptation, looked as if it had been on the sectional shedding since the beginning of time, or since the couch had left the factory, which was pretty much one and the same from Ken's perspective. The orange tabby in the wingback stretched, then looked Ken up and down critically.
"He's not much even by human standards, is he? You'd think when you kick the top off the anthill, something better would crawl out. But, he'll have to do."
Before Ken could object, a third cat, which had taken up residence in the lazy boy recliner, declared, "Agreed. Let's get started then, shall we?" Ken noted, thankfully. It was a black short hair, so the creature's shedding would be minimal. The cat was lean and black, the opposite of the other two, and looked to Ken like an animated Egyptian statue of some feline god he had seen in a traveling exhibit, or on the back of a cereal box. Ken couldn't quite remember which. "They thought of me as the goddess Beset. I am the amazing creature she was patterned after. So, you are lucky to bask in my greatness, human. Feel free to bow in my presence." The sleek black cat casually licked the fur on one of her shoulders. "And I'm not bragging here. Okay, maybe I am a bit, but I was the personal advisor to Khufu, Tutankhamun, and, well, most of that crowd. Those were the days when humans did what they were told and understood their place." You, slack-jawed, Ken began to ask. "Knew that you were thinking I looked like a goddess?" The black cat purred. "It's easy to know what a monkey is going to say. Really, you're quite transparent. That's why we chose you." "Chose me for what?" Ken questioned defiantly. "Is this one of those hidden camera shows where they make people look stupid by doing silly things like talking to cats?" Sensing there was no way the cats were about to move so he could sit, Ken settled onto the mismatched ottoman his aunt had given him to go with the wingback chair, and for which he was currently crocheting another pink and orange cover with a herringbone pattern to match the one on the back of the sectional. "Fine, then," the black cat noted hotly, after a rather long, awkward silence. She shot an evil eye at Ken, indicating she was not going to dignify his stupid question with an answer. "Now that the token human has settled in, let us start, shall we? Who's going to take minutes? If we're going to do this right, we need minutes. Caesar?" The big Maine Coon ensconced on the sectional hissed.
"No way, mate. Me and Mr. Fluffy over there ain't handicapping our negotiations like by worrying about taking no notes. Get the human to do it, Bella."
Excuse me, I have a name. It's Ken," Ken objected. "And, I refuse to make a fool out of myself until I know what's going on, or your producers show me the waiver form for the—" "Enough," the black cat hissed. "Human, take minutes." "But I don't have a pen," Ken objected.
"That's, your problem, not ours,"
Mr. Fluffy, the orange tabby, pointed out matter-of-factly. "I could record it on my phone," Ken volunteered cautiously. The three cats thought about it, then nodded their consent. "Okay, human, start the recording, and let's get on with it." Ken, my name is Ken." Ken, starting to feel somewhat insecure, insisted. Bella ignored him. "We're here to split the spoils. Where is that ball? Human, what did you do with it?" "Slipped on it, because Mr. Fluffy over there left it on the hall floor," Ken began, indignantly, then stopped, when the rational part of his brain, which had obviously been taking a bit of a well-deserved break, after all, it was a long weekend, decided enough was enough. You're cats! Shouldn't you be sleeping, chasing mice, or batting a ball of yarny stuff around or something? Not holding a meeting in my living room, shedding. Well, I guess you do that anyway. Regardless, you're house cats! I am not taking orders from talking house cats. Get out! He demanded, with all the authority he could muster, which wasn't much. So Ken knew he was probably on thin ice. The three cats seemed amused. Finally, Bella glared at Ken until she seemed as large as a mountain lion in that weird part of Ken's mind. The weird part of Ken's mind which classified the appearance of talking cats in the same category of mysteries as the place socks, which mysteriously disappear in the dryer go, and why you could only find lost stuff when you weren't actually looking for it. "Okay, I'll just get the ball then, shall I?" Ken volunteered, crawling under the hall table to retrieve the thing.
"That's a good human," Mr. Fluffy encouraged. "And, if you don't mind, if it's not too much trouble, I mean, would you place it on the coffee table?"
Ken obeyed, carefully putting the crude globe ball on the Danish modern surface, which looked like it had been a recent stand-in for a scratching post, which it had. He watched in disbelief as the ball floated off the abused table and grew to the size of a large beach ball, which slowly rotated on its axis.
"That's better, mate."
Caesar sat up and pointed to the blob representing Eurasia.
"I'll take that bit there, a biggest one."
"We agreed on equal thirds, Caesar," Bella growled. "It would be easier to slice it up like an apple, pole to pole." "I could get a knife," Ken volunteered, rationalizing the faster the annoying talking cats resolved whatever dispute they were having, the sooner they would be gone, and the sooner he could get back to important day-off things, like watching TV. All three cats hissed with laughter.
"Oh, how quaint. He really doesn't have a clue, does he?"
Mr. Fluffy scoffed.
"Crikey, mate, the ball is only a stand-in, not the real prize, Bruce. We're talking about your planet here. We found it a whiles back, all by its lonesome, floating out in the middle of whoop-whoop, for crikey's sake. Although we might have been a bit legless at the time. It doesn't take much catnip to get Mr. Fluffy and Bella there all wonky-minded. Anyway, it was sitting there all by its lonesome like, so we claimed it for ourselves. except for one little detail.
And, what's that? Ken carefully ventured, beginning to get the feeling his day off was not going to roll out exactly how he imagined it.
We need to split up the prize fair-like. I voted for a coin toss, winner take all, but me mates here wouldn't go for it. So here we are, trying to agree on how to split up the spoils, so to speak.
Ken stared, uncomprehendingly.
We're dividing up your world, mate. You know, the thing you're standing on right now.
Caesar swatted at something beside his head.
Oi, there's a mozzie in here. Did you leave the door open there, Bruce?
Ken. My name is Ken, Ken protested. We agreed on an even split, and it will be that way, or no way at all, Bella noted, then stopped to lick at something on her forepaw. However, I'd like to point out I'm the one with the largest presence on this mud ball. Did I mention the Egyptians thought I was a god and made statues of me? Some of them were even good. So, if you go by references in what passes for their history, as paltry as it is, then I should have the largest share, i.e. everything. Bella flicked her tail in anticipation.
Really? Is that so, Bella? Well, if you use that logic, there is no question,
Mr. Fluffy objected.
It should all be mine. Everything. Look at my work with the Vikings. I was the one to encourage Leif Erikson. I slept on his head when he was a kitten, whispered in his ear, made him who he was. Did you know he wanted to be a nanny, look after his cousin's kids, cook and stuff like that? Can you imagine that? Then I got a hold of his mind. If I hadn't, he would have never discovered Vinland. And then, what would have happened? Tell me that. It's the butterfly effect, and that's huge.
Mr. Fluffy got up languidly to stretch, then started to knead the chair with his claws. Little tufts of stuffing began to poke out.
Stop that,
Ken snapped.
Quiet there, Bruce.
I'm not Bruce. Caesar held up a paw to stop Ken.
We got some serious negotiating to do here, mate. If we go with the historical angle, then I should get the east coast of the U.S., south of Newfoundland, because of my special relationship with Captain Sam Coon in the 1700s. Sailed with him, you know, and fathered a whole breed of cats in the Americas. They should have been called Caesars, not named after the captain. That's got to count for something, right? Even more reason I want what's rightfully mine. I want all the Americas and Aussie land for good measure.
Caesar hissed, then distractedly batted at the air with one paw.
It's another dang mozzie. Haven't you closed the door yet there, Bruce? If you're not too useless then, mate, to close it, you could at least give me a frothy and fly swatter.
Ken, not entirely understanding Caesar's slang, and deciding it was not the place of a self-invited cat to boss him around, stayed put on the ottoman. If we did this your way, Caesar, Bella's eyes appeared to glow for a second, we'd be here for a decade. Really, both of you should be grateful I even agreed to share anything, when clearly everything is mine anyways. Read the fine print on the back of the claim form next time. Oh, that's right. Neither of you can read archaic Egyptian. My bad. Hey, I'm humoring you because it pleases me to do so. But this whole negotiation thing is already well past its best before. I'm thinking I should...
Should do what, Bella? You'll take the whole planet and go home to bat it around by yourself. Yes, that's your plan? Over my dead body.
Mr. Fluffy had puffed up his fur to make himself look bigger. If need be, Bella gave Mr. Fluffy a predatorial smile.
Oh, I don't think so. Our arrangement supersedes any standing agreements around finder's rights, Bella.
The orange cat pointed out in a lawyery voice.
And that also applies to the fine print you surreptitiously inserted in some arcane language only you can read. You just can't walk away with everything here. We each get an equal split, or none of us get anything. And I agree with you about Caesar's approach. Parceling it out piece by piece will take us too long, even though it's not that big or tasty as planets go. Plus, it's been soiled by monkeys, so there's lots of yucky bits. You've got to watch where you plunder, you know. It makes me shudder to think about it. I don't want to touch the yucky bits if it can be avoided. We split the planet into 3 equal pieces, like a cake or something. It's cleaner, faster, and those yucky bits like mint or something equally disgusting, you can pluck them out with a fork when the time comes to deal with them. No need to touch the stuff with your paws.
There was a noise in the front hall, which, most days, was just the junk mail Ken had piled in a stack beside the door, falling over onto the floor in a desperate attempt to get one of their kind to wedge its way under the closet door for Ken to find when he was in a more receptive mood. And this was the exact sound they heard that put the cats on edge, but it was followed by the footsteps of someone wearing natural earth sandals and claws ticking along the vintage 60-year-old lino.
Hey, man! Did I hear the word cake? The sugar and fat will kill you cats.
Leaf, Ken's vegan hippie neighbor, greeted as he walked into the living room. He noticed the cats and stopped dead in his sandals.
Whoa! Freaky scene, man. When I said cats, man, I meant it as like a figurative expression, you know? Like a bunch of cool dudes, hipsters, that kind of scene. I thought you had a happening going on here with some role-playing, Kenny. Would have been very cool.
Leaf looked from the floating beach ball globe to the cats, then to Ken.
But this is a real heavy scene, dude. Real heavy. Do you know who these cats are, man? I mean, really are. They're not your typical house variety, is what I'm getting at, bro. Kinda seeing them together like this is, no way to fur-coat it. Pardon the pun. It's a bum trip. These cats are not beautiful people, man. Not at all. They are the real, mean, reality-crushing, bad trip type. Are you picking up what I'm trying to lay down, Kenny?
Not this time, Leaf. Ken began to object, but he had to admit he was happy to see his nosy neighbor for once. Nothing seemed to faze the man, and there had certainly been a lot of weirdness recently. The cats suddenly arched their backs, fur turned to spikes, tails straight up, fangs exposed, and hissed.
Get that thing out of here,
Bella demanded. Leaf smiled.
You mean my wicked friend Planet here? She's real hip, man. Totally cool, and definitely not on the same wavelength as you ego trippers. Why'd you crash here, man? Wouldn't think this place had the biomass to make it a feline guru blast. Oi, hippie! Keep Pavlov's dog there on a leash, or get your mongrel out of here, Caesar demanded. We haven't got time to experiment on it today. Too bad, though. Would have been fun to create some new flavored hot dog or something with it, mate. Oi, Bruce, is this guy a rally of yours?
No. He's my neighbor, and my name isn't Bruce. It's Ken. Ken was starting to lose his patience. Vacuuming the cat hair out of the furniture alone was going to take hours. He checked the LED wristwatch he'd been given as a birthday present when he was 6. The red, glowing digits informed him he was going to miss the season finale of his favorite cable TV show about a city clerk who ran a metal detector club on the side, and he wasn't going to miss the reveal of the club's best finding. The teaser last week had him on the edge of his chair. There was a loud squawk as the camera zoomed in on the head of the hero's custom-modified Spectra V3i. It's non-ferrous, and it's large! Then the scene cut to black, leaving Ken wanting more. Well, he wasn't about to miss it, so he decided he needed to speed things up a bit. Okay, so you want to divide things up in equal thirds, and you're having trouble deciding who gets which piece? Well, so this doesn't take all day and I don't miss my show. Why don't you pick a number between 1 and 20, and the person, cat, who guessed closest gets the first third, and so on like that.
Not a bad idea, really,
Mr. Fluffy conceded. Bella and Caesar nodded in agreement. Seems fair, right? Well, let's get on with it then, shall we? Human, pick a number. Bella demanded, then started to preen herself.
Hey, Kenny dude, you might want to ask these cats what they mean by divide.
Leaf suggested nervously, looking a bit like he and Planet might need to make a quick exit. Annoyed, Ken checked his digital watch again. Really, Leaf? I'm going to miss the start of my show as it is. I'm sure it's just some meaningless agreement like who gets all the mice and birds in a given territory. Sort of hunting rights type thing. No, Mr. Human, you have it quite wrong. Bella crooned, cleaning the top of her head with a forepaw. She looked at Ken and smiled, the way cats do when they're about to bat their prey around for a bit, just to make things more fun before they eat it. I don't know why I should even bother to explain this to a monkey, Bella complained. They're not capable of comprehending the bigger picture. They're not very strategic. Not very strategic at all. Can't think beyond the next banana and who's got the biggest one. We'll get more than a few mice, Mr. Human. We are going to literally, and by literally, I mean in a literal manner, in the strictest sense of the word possible, with only one interpretation, going to physically divide this mud ball into 3. I, for one, will take my third of the prize as far away from these two incompetents as I can. I might roll my bit back into a ball again or something. Maybe let it get infected with the likes of you again. Nah, probably not. It'd be more interesting to let the goldfish take over next time, so they could flush the monkeys down the toilet. There's a nice reciprocity about that one, I should think. I suppose Mr. Fluffy over there will just eat his part on the spot, questionable bits and all. He's got no control, you know. That's why he's a bit on the portly side. And Caesar, who knows, maybe he'll just bat his third around for a while until it turns into stellar dust. He's got no patience, that one. Needs immediate gratification.
All right, enough. Let's get on with it, mates,
Caesar growled.
As long as we all get exactly the same size piece, I don't care what the Queen of Sheba over there says. Or does. Or if Mr. Tubby treats his share like shark biscuits at feeding time. But it's got to be exactly equal. That's what we agreed to, and that's dead set. Bruce, mate, pick the number.
Ken stumbled, having second thoughts. We're talking metaphorically, right?
Didn't you hear the lady, Bruce? We're all powerful. It's not that hard to split a planet up. Won't take a second, and you might not even feel anything, if you're lucky, mate. But I suspect this ain't your lucky day there, Bruce.
My name is not Bruce. Ken turned in desperation to get some type of assurance from Leaf, who simply shrugged as he started backing out of the room.
I'm not copping out, man. We just need a head start. But Planet can give you the dope on these cats. They're a freaky group, been around forever. Seeing the 3 of them together is a real bummer, man. It's bad stuff.
Let me think about this, Planet said suddenly, tilting her head.
Ain't that cute? The dog can talk and claims it can think.
Caesar muttered, then swatted at another mosquito, which had dared to venture into Ken's house despite the insect zapper on his front porch. It had a guaranteed effective range of 50 feet, and was why Ken had bought it, and was why he was currently scratching a particularly itchy bite on the back of his neck, thinking he needed to get his money back. Planet barked, making the cats instinctively turn into Halloween silhouettes. 1/3 each? This only works if you can each have exactly the same, right? Not even a smidgen more or less, correct? Planet confirmed.
Stop stating the obvious, dog, Mr. Fluffy said, licking his chops. I'm getting hungry.
That's 3.333, etc. times 3? Planet smiled. There was an awkward silence, punctuated by the buzzing of 2 mosquitoes. The second one, noting his cousin hadn't been instantly fried by the bug zapper, had decided to try its luck too. Finally, Leaf snapped his fingers.
I dig it, man! Planet, you're right on! There's always a 0.1 or 0.1 or something like that left over. Otherwise, it adds up to 0.9. That's mind-blowing, lady. Hey, cats, who gets the point?
The cats looked confused.
Add it up, man. 3.3 3 times, you get 9.9. You'll always get 0.9, so who gets the 0.1?
Leaf repeated, smiling. Caesar and Mr. Fluffy glared at Bella.
Me, she admitted confidently. I deserve it all, so of course the rounding error naturally comes my way.
And over an infinite number of planets, mate.
Caesar growled and looked to Mr. Fluffy. There was a sudden flash of fur and the sound of shrill meows, the type of shrill meows you hear on a hot summer night when you have the windows open after the AC breaks down and you can't get back to sleep because of the cats fighting in the lane behind the garbage cans over their territory. Then there was silence, except for the buzzing of now a half-dozen mosquitoes. Ken made a note to return the bug zapper.
Well, I guess that ends that,
Ken observed, then sat down on his sectional, careful not to get the cat hair on his pants, and turned on the TV. Makeshift Stories is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB Financial. This episode was brought to you by Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your energy from. Park Power has low overhead, and chances are you'll save money if you switch. You can find out how much money you would save by visiting parkpower.ca and plugging your numbers into the Alberta Energy Savings Calculator. If you decide to switch, it's easy. Nothing changes about your service, only the price you pay. Learn more at parkpower.ca. The Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB, is proud to be a sponsor of this year's Pod Summit, Western Canada's premier podcast conference. Join us and Makeshift Stories on June 22nd at Fort Calgary for a day of learning and connection making. The theme of this year's conference is After the Start. Here's what you'll learn: how to make your podcast stand out of the crowd, how to breathe new life into your show if you've been podcasting for a while, how to connect with your listeners and build a community that supports you, marketing tips and tricks to grow your show from hundreds to thousands of downloads, how to build different income streams with your podcast. Tickets are just $150. You can get $25 off by using the promo code ILOVEPODCASTING. That's I Love Podcasting, all lowercase, no spaces. Get your ticket today at podsummit.com. To listen to other great APN podcasts, such as Not There Yet, please head over to albertapodcastnetwork.com. Makeshift Stories is released twice a month around the 1st and the 15th. This month's story was written by Alan V. Hare and read by Mitchell 2. Opening and closing theme, Magical Mystery by 8th Mode Music, is licensed from Audio Jungle on a Music Mass Reproduction license. If you'd like to connect with us, please send an email to makeshiftstories@gmail.com or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Links to both are in the show notes. You can help us out by writing a review on Stitcher Radio or Apple Podcasts or any of your favorite podcast services. Makeshift Stories is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution no derivative license, which means that you are free to share our stories. Just remember to credit us and don't alter anything.